Just when it seems that an all-EV world is around the corner, we start hearing about some major setback. In today's video, we'll talk about how the EU's Thierry Breton has urged automakers to keep producing cars with internal combustion engines, also known as ICE. We'll also talk about how he's calling on folks to review the 2035 ICE ban, so make sure to stay until the end to learn all about it. First up, Thierry Breton doesn't think EVs are the future. EVs may look exciting, they may sound exciting, and they may be amazingly quick, but they have several limitations. First, the battery packs, which are hazardous to the environment, will need to be replaced. Think about this. You buy a phone and an ICE car at the same time. While in a couple of years, your phone's battery will go weak, your ICE car will remain almost as good as new. Then there's range anxiety. You can't just fill up whenever you want. You need charging stations, and you need a lot of time on your hands, so say goodbye to breezy road trips. Considering these current limitations, EVs might just not be the future we expect to see. But there are other problems as well. As the EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton mentioned, Europe's push for its auto industry to go all-electric will pose dangers to employment and car affordability. He's even asked automakers to maintain making cars with ICE powertrains. In an interview with a French publication, he stated that, "I respect the fact that some are deciding to speed up towards 100% electric cars, but I also encourage manufacturers to continue to produce internal combustion cars, generate quality jobs, and remain an export force." Not too long ago, the European Union reached a landmark deal to successfully ban new combustion engine cars from 2035 onwards. This will reshape how we commute, and this will be a massive step in our bid to cut down on carbon emissions. Breton has claimed that this deal needs to be reviewed, but we'll get to that later in the video. Moving on. What's Breton's argument? He needs to have a darn good argument to claim what he claimed, right? Because in a world that's already starting to see signs of global warming, it's quite villainish to rigidly stand in support of ICE. Well, first, he's not alone. The issues he raised echo those raised by firms such as Stellantis. The auto giant has warned that the auto industry will collapse if the trade cannot lower the price of electric cars. And yes, that's actually true. A $50,000 EV might just be a basic car, while a $50,000 ICE car will host several interesting features. So of course, customers might just be inclined to keep spending on ICE. But that's not all. There are a bunch of other issues as well. Breton has claimed that this industry employs about 13 million people, and the shift to EVs could impact 600,000 jobs, which doesn't really make sense, if you ask us, because while, yes, ICE cars have a lot of components that need to be manufactured, making an EV isn't all that breezy either. You'll still need a host of folks to manage that. And then, of course, there's the fact that as economies move forward, jobs switch from manufacturing to services. Nonetheless, Breton has argued that this whole shift will cost jobs, and that's exactly why he doesn't want to move to EVs just yet. But Thierry, what happens when we run out of oil? Isn't it much better to prepare for that catastrophe a couple of decades beforehand? Lastly, is he taking any action? It's important to find out what he plans to do because, well, this isn't really a decision you can make on a whim. It's about the future of our planet, not buying a social media platform that you then run to the ground. Twitter. Breton has mentioned that he's relying on a 2026 assessment clause, which he insisted on including in the EU deal, making a mechanism for the 2035 deadline to be pushed again. He has also mentioned that he'll be creating a working group that'll have important automakers and that will frequently meet over the next 4 years. When talking about the 2026 assessment, he mentioned that there mustn't be any taboo, and as we mentioned earlier, Breton isn't fighting this fight alone. Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, has been extremely vocal about this 2035 ban. He's voiced his opinion several times, discussing the danger of the EU's phasing out of combustion engines. He's even claimed that it's not Stellantis he's worried about, it's the middle-class folks who won't be able to purchase cars that cost around 30,000 euros. Okay, Carlos. Okay, we believe you. Let's be real, folks. Let's look at the bigger picture. Yes, EVs are expensive, but is the price of oil really ever going to stay the same? As we run out, it's going to become one expensive commodity. So the middle-class folks will end up suffering then too. Isn't it just a better solution to get ahead of this thing? Oh, and we're also burning our planet with these ICE cars. EU Commissioner calls for a review of the 2035 car ban. So we've spent quite some time talking about why Thierry Breton doesn't feel that the ICE power unit should be phased out. We've also talked about how he's called on folks to review the 2035 ICE ban, but let's take some time to talk more about it and what it could mean for Europe. So with no further delay, let's dive right in. First and foremost, the 2035 ban needs to be reviewed. The Frenchman has insisted that he backs ambitious goals, but he also claims that he doesn't see the car industry meeting them anytime soon. The EU could still hit the brakes on its plan to phase out sales of cars that emit carbon dioxide. Granted that the market for EVs doesn't take off in time. In an interview, he stated that this new law could be reopened in 2026 to give the car industry more time to ramp up its EV production. He also claims that this review clause was extremely important because such a gigantic industrial shift wouldn't be easy to manage, so they need to be able to act with agility to ensure a proper transfer. This review has been brought forward to 2026 under pressure from car-making countries. For example, France has called for plug-in hybrids to be considered beyond 2035. Germany, on the other hand, has backed the allowing of combustion engines that run on e-fuels, the term for synthetic fuel manufactured with captured hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Now, this is something we can get on board with. Changes like this would require an update to the agreed-upon legislation. This is exactly why Breton mentioned that no taboo thing we talked about earlier. Breton has also added that a lack of charging infrastructure and a supply crunch in the raw materials needed to produce batteries are the factors that'll lead to the delay in this planned EV rollout. Let's talk about the agreement and the opposition. EU negotiators reached a deal, setting a zero-emissions sales mandate for new cars and vans by 2035. The point of this agreement was to send a strong signal to the industry and to its consumers. What they wanted to convey was that Europe's embracing the shift to zero-emission mobility. And you know, folks, many car makers have been committed to ditching the ICE technology, and they're already starting to shift to EVs. However, many industry captains and those representing the vast network of Europe's automotive suppliers have shown staunch opposition. After all, it's about their businesses. Because we're not just talking about these car companies, we're also talking about the many small companies that'll lose out on many important contracts. As we've already mentioned, fewer parts go into EV manufacturing as compared to ICE cars. For example, in an electric vehicle, all you need is the chassis, the body, the wheels, the motors to run them, and the batteries to power them. However, ICE is a lot more complicated than that. We'll give y'all an example. An average ICE powertrain has over 2,200 moving parts. How much does an average EV have? 20. That's it. So the folks that manufacture a bunch of these parts will also end up losing out on their jobs. And that's exactly why Breton noted that some 600,000 jobs will be lost. He also noted the extreme pressure this is going to put on Europe's electrical grid. Finally, let's talk about some other problems with EVs. Oil will run out someday, for sure, but so will the things that we need to manufacture EVs. To produce enough electric cars to replace traditional ones, we'll need 4 times more cobalt, 15 times more lithium, 4 times more graphite, and 3 times more nickel. Considering this absolutely enormous consumption of raw materials, we need to ensure we have enough, and that it's all safe for us and the environment. Oh, and then we have some problems with cars in general. Emissions aren't the only thing that cause problems. We also have the fact that toxic nitrogen oxides and other particles are emitted by tires and brakes. Oh, and making infrastructure to support cars also produces a lot of emissions. According to Breton, these non-exhaust emissions are also damaging to our health. So EVs aren't all that green. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you guys think EVs will solve all our problems in the future? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Goodbye and see you in the next one.